how's it going, everybody? It is Owen Shapiro right here in the lounge of my dormitory. I'm going to be giving the 25 greatest quarterbacks ever before this season, who I believe are the greatest quarterbacks ever. I believe the game itself has changed. It's changed a little bit. It's had different evolutions and different things that happened. And this is my personal opinion. I'm not saying I'm the only one who's right. There might be other versions, but this is my version. I had another version about 8 years ago, or not, probably about 5 years ago, I'd say, with my 120 greatest quarterbacks ever. This is just 25, and as the game has evolved itself, we've seen many up-and-comers. We've seen Mahomes. We've seen many other players like Allen show up. I think it's time at the year 2025 to give my greatest 25 quarterbacks of all time as Owen Shapiro. On the list, we have Rich Gannon. Rich Gannon, to me, is one of the greatest quarterbacks who ever lived. He had a few different teams, but obviously he was on the Raiders. He won MVP that one season in 2002, and he ended up going to the Super Bowl. They didn't win. They did not win. But at the same time, myself, I personally feel like that he still played great. He still was a great player. And so my whole thing is, sure, they didn't win. His high was really high, while his MVP playing was his MVP playing. We have Russell Wilson from the Seattle Seahawks, Denver Broncos, and New York Giants. I know that his post-Seattle career has been a bit up and down. I think when he was on Seattle, he was one of the greatest, probably top 10 QBs, maybe top 10 QBs in terms of his height. I'm not saying like how tall he is, but his height in terms of how great he can be. I believe that Russell Wilson was dangerous. That's why they called him Dangerous Wilson. And I believe on the Broncos, I think things could have went his way a bit better. I think he was unlucky. I think he was great, but unlucky. And I think while that first year was a little bit, showed he aged a bit, that second year he didn't play all that bad. I thought he was pretty good. One of the best QBs in the NFL, and he was still good that first year. It was just a little bit of missing pieces from the team and the coaching and how things went. And on the Giants, sure, things haven't went well, but that's this year, right? So that's just something to me that sticks out. Number 23, we have Joe Flacco. And Joe Flacco, in my opinion, is up there with Eli Manning as some of those big upsetter QBs, some of the greatest QBs in playoff history, a lifelong playoff quarterback. And I think it's interesting to show how far Joe Flacco has came from his beginning to his end. I think he's still in the NFL today. He's still doing great. And to me, I think Joe Flacco is one of the 25 greatest QBs who ever played this game. I honestly believe that. And even if Joe Flacco won one Super Bowl, he was a threat to my Patriots. He was a threat to Peyton Manning. He was a threat to some of these teams. Number 22, we have Fran Tarkenton. I think this is the guy that established the Joe Montana, Patrick Mahomes, the Aaron Rodgers style playing. He created it. He founded it. He created it. He created it, right? And I think it really shows. I mean, look, he didn't win any Super Bowls, but he went there. He went there, and he was great. And I think, in my opinion, that he deserves more credit than he got. Number 21, we have Terry Bradshaw. I think growing up, I used to see all the Terry Bradshaw photos and highlights, right? He was an all-time QB, won tons of Super Bowls, led Pittsburgh to Super Bowl wins, really well respected across NFL players and QBs, and I really like that guy. I think he is. I think he's great. I think he's an all-time great. I mean, he's even good at commentating, right? I mean, Terry Bradshaw himself, I think he's great, but I do think Staubach is better because I have Staubach at number 20. I think Staubach will be looked at more in a much more appreciated way as we go and move into the future. I think Roger Staubach was some of the creators of that risky type quarterback playing, that John Elway style, the slinging style quarterback playing. He'd always pump, right? All of that. I think that's what made him so great. And I think he's great himself. But I think another QB we need to mention at number 19 is Joe Namath. Joe Namath, number 19. I think that Joe Namath is a historically respected QB. Sure, his statistics may not have been his best, but he was older. Not only that, things were getting rougher and rougher. This team was getting worse and worse. I think having Joe Namath at number 19, to me, makes the most sense. I think Joe Namath, he pulled off the biggest upset in NFL Super Bowl history, right? He pulled off some of that stuff. And even though, obviously the one where the Giants beat my Patriots is probably the biggest in modern day, he pulled off the biggest of all time. And I think he deserves much more credit. I think that Joe Namath is an all-time legend. Number 18, we have Steve Young. All right, so I've seen a lot of people tell me, well, Steve Young might be the GOAT. He might be the GOAT. Isn't Steve Young the GOAT, right? Steve Young has got to be the GOAT, right? Of course, it's Steve Young. But I don't think people realize that sure, Joe Montana played a bit better, but I think Steve Young has defined his own way of playing. He's defined his own way of play style, which made him so great in the 90s. I think it would be tough to say that Steve Young could have done what Joe Montana did because they're completely different QBs, and I think Joe Montana is on another level from Steve Young, but I think Steve Young is great. Not Joe Montana level, but I love Steve Young. I think this is a controversial pick. I have Kirk Cousins as my 17th greatest quarterback of all time. I think Kirk Cousins, yeah, sure, he's been benched recently, but at his height, he was MVP caliber, in my opinion. I think Kirk Cousins on the Commanders, Redskins, Commanders, we'll call them Commanders, from what I remember was some of the best quarterback playing of all time. When he was on the Vikings, some of the best quarterback playing of all time. And I personally feel like Kirk Cousins deserves a lot more credit than he gets. I think he's incredibly balanced and stable in the pocket. I think when he was on the Commanders that one year, when he beat Prime Rodgers, he beat all these difficult teams to beat, he was a top free agent. People kept on putting in more money and more money. Number 16, we have Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson deserves this. Originally, I had him at like 10 or 11, but I think Lamar Jackson is one of the best scrambling, probably the greatest scrambling quarterback of all time. Best running quarterback of all time in terms of scrambling out of past the line of scrimmage. I think Lamar Jackson is Mike Vick times 100, times 200, times 300, 400. I think Lamar Jackson will, if he just wins one Super Bowl, he's a top 5 QB ever. If he just wins one of them. Number 15, we have Matt Ryan, the guy who won MVP in 2016. Yeah, we know what happened where he lost to my Patriots, but I think this guy was a threat. He was a threat to the entire NFC South, and he made the South look like a dangerous place to be. He made the South look really dangerous if you're a quarterback, seriously. I think Ken Stabler was such a fun QB to watch even if you weren't from the 70s. I think Stabler was a quarterback who changed the game. Super Bowls aside, I think that quarterback was important, and I think it's great he was in the Hall of Fame. Jim Kelly. I think if Jim Kelly wins one Super Bowl, he's a top 5 QB ever. I think Jim Kelly did not have the right luck. He was incredible, but did not have the right luck. I mean, honestly, how could somebody go 4 straight Super Bowls and not win? I mean, it's insane. And I think he's an all-time great quarterback. Thankfully, he got over cancer, and I think he's great, and I think he deserves all the credit, every single credit he gets. I think Bart Starr is the greatest pre-NFL QB ever. Maybe him and Unitas, but I believe Bart Starr is up there in the top 2. 5 championship wins. that is insane. It is insane. Insane. And I think that Bart Starr is, once again, he's a replica of football before the NFL started. And I think he deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore of the creators of football, because he himself created the offense with Vince Lombardi as the head coach, but he himself created the offense. Number 11, we have Brett Favre. To me, Brett Favre is the biggest risk-taking quarterback of all time, and they all are risk takers. I think in order to get to where they have to get to, they have to be risk takers. But to me, Brett Favre was the biggest risk-taking quarterback of his time, at least post-2000. I mean, I know he's in the 90s and won a Super Bowl in the 90s, but post-2000, he was the biggest risk taker. He was a slinger. He was a straight slinger. Number 10, we have John Elway. To me, John Elway really hit his height when he won the Super Bowl for the first time in the late 90s. Because, to me, John Elway was so great before him, but he had never won a Super Bowl. I think he went to 5, it was? 4, 5, or 6? 5? And he finally won his in the final. A bit controversial. I thought about it. I have the biggest respect for this guy. Greatest play caller in NFL history, likely. Peyton Manning. All right, this guy is the greatest audible caller ever. I think he's incredible. We got Dan Marino. The reason why I put Dan Marino above Peyton Manning is because I believe they're very similar, but I believe Dan Marino was better at what he had than what Manning did with himself. So, like, example, I think Marino had an awful team some years and still played great. Manning rarely had an awful team and played great. Controversial, here we go again. We got Joe Montana at number 7. Why did I put Joe Montana at number 7? Well, the reason to me is because I believe there are some quarterbacks who are more important to history who established what football is. I think Joe Montana is the greatest pre-Tom Brady quarterback ever. Good? Good. There we go. I just think that Joe Montana, I think there were some quarterbacks that were before him that played in tougher competition, and I think there's some quarterbacks nowadays that played at their best when things were really the most difficult. Mahomes eclipsed Joe Montana. I think Joe Montana was great, but I think Patrick Mahomes did what Montana did and even made it more of that West Coast offense. He took what Montana did and he put it up a notch. 5, we have Otto Graham. This guy won over 8 championships in the AFL before the NFL even started. Before it even started. And I just Otto Graham, he was such a groundbreaking quarterback. He would run, he would pass, he would scramble, he would throw dimes, but he would also run past the line of scrimmage. I think he established so many things to what a quarterback is now back then. Before we have Drew Brees. Once again, I think Drew Brees does what Marino and Manning have done. But I think Drew Brees had worse teams and harder competition. I think Drew Brees, once again, he always played incredible. I don't think there was a time Drew Brees ever choked, honestly. I think Drew Brees was able to eclipse Manning statistically, eclipse Marino in terms of success. So why wouldn't I? Number 3, we got Sammy Baugh. Number 3 is Sammy Baugh. I believe the most important quarterback in the history of quarterbacks of this era, of all time, of sports in football. Because I personally feel like Sammy Baugh, he himself created the position. The position was made from Sammy Baugh. Before then, it was just running, flicking, But Sammy Baugh, he created it. He created what a quarterback was. Number 2, we have Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, to me, is the second greatest quarterback ever. I don't care what anyone says. Aaron Rodgers is the second greatest quarterback ever. I just personally think, to me, myself, is Aaron Rodgers could have made other teams much better. He does what Montana does. He does what Mahomes does. He does what Tarkenton does. And to me, that brings us to the greatest quarterback ever, my GOAT, Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback, the greatest passer, the clutchest athlete, the greatest teammate, the greatest decision maker, the biggest under pressure, the best in those moments, the best against all the most difficult teams, takes the worst teams and makes them the best. Tom Brady, the GOAT, the greatest ever. Let's go. He is the GOAT. He will always be the GOAT to me, and I think he's the greatest athlete ever. Maybe not in terms of athleticism. Athleticism, that's Michael Jordan. But in terms of being a quarterback in a position, he takes it and he knows his position. He makes himself the greatest. I'm your boy Owen Shapiro, guys. I'm out. See you guys. Stay cinematic.